Atheism doesn't have to answer the ultimate question, and that is why those with questions will need to dig deeper. Sections 1 to 3 were the introduction to the eternal question of God. They covered the proper perspective to have, why it is important for believers and non-believers to dig deeper, to find their own truth, and finally they cover why the consequences make finding the answers so important. With these addressed, inquiring minds are free to ask the deeper and more profound questions. Perhaps the best place to start is by asking for reasons of what people believe and why. In essence, we need to talk about proof. However, before we do that, we need to address the atheist perspective. Most atheistic perspectives have issues with specific religions and beliefs. Many disagree with specific religious principles or question their historical timelines. As we discussed in the introduction, the question of God goes beyond the human perspective of religion and is much bigger than what happens on earth. The question of God is bigger than a specific religion. One must address the question of God first. Only then can you consider a religion in which to express that belief. As a result, atheistic contentions about any religion are primarily off the main topic, namely the existence of God. As to atheism itself, it argues for the absence of belief in deities. Their argument that there is nothing, frankly, begins and ends right there. There is little point in spending more time on arguing for the absence of something. This is a simple and straightforward position. So if you have questions, you now know what an atheist believes and can move forward and dig deeper. To that end, the discussions that follow will cover various points of view that believers point to as proof enough for their belief. It is important to note that the examples in the discussions ahead are not meant to usher in conversion or belief. You are free to come to your own conclusions. As we discussed in the introduction to this series, the question of the existence of God is too important to dismiss, and the consequences are so profound that we must still ask them. This is meant to be as impartial and informational as possible. Therefore, it is your job to look at the information and evidence you are presented with and draw your own conclusions. Perhaps better yet is to continue to ask more questions. With non-belief addressed, we can now move to the next section, Believers' Proofs of God's Existence, in Part 5. For further and more in-depth discussions on this series and related topics, please visit AwareCare Share.